Hello, and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at.
I will negotiate the details around this budget, but I will not negotiate my values.
Has Mayor Johnson lost control over the city budget debate? A look at how President-elect Donald Trump's tariff plans could impact your pocketbook. And with head coach Matt Eberflus getting shown the door, what's next for the Chicago Bears? And now to some of today's top stories. A man accused of shooting a Jewish man back in October is found dead by an apparent suicide in Cook County Jail. The sheriff's office says Sadi Muhammad Abdullahi was found unresponsive during a routine security check on Saturday. He was taken to Mount Sinai Hospital where he was pronounced dead. In a statement, the sheriff's office says there was no evidence of foul play, and the Cook County Medical Examiner is conducting an autopsy. Abdullahi was facing hate crime charges after being accused of firing several shots at a 39-year-old Jewish man who was walking to a synagogue. Cook County's new state's attorney began her first day on the job sounding the alarm on gun violence and detailing her office's plan to respond.
Our number of shootings has risen exponentially. We have war zone numbers of people being wounded by gun violence right now. We are having a mass shooting on a regular basis. We are becoming numb to the numbers. I don't want to become numb. I want to do something about it.
Shortly after taking the oath of office, O'Neill Burke announced a new detention policy where prosecutors will seek pretrial detention in all of the most serious offenses, including murder, kidnapping, and sex offenses. She says her office will also file to detain suspects charged with crimes involving firearms with an extended magazine or switch or ghost guns, those taking place on public transit, and those that are domestic violence related. Among the other officials in attendance for O'Neill Burke's swearing in, Illinois Comptroller Susana Mendoza and former Chicago mayors Lori Lightfoot and Richard M. Daley. Also sworn in today, the new clerk of the Circuit Court, Mariana Spiropoulos. Her office is in charge of hundreds of thousands of court records. Today, Spiropoulos promised her office would be transparent and accessible, as well as within the law, promising to appoint an independent inspector general to root out corruption. Members of Congress are expanding the fight against vaping products targeted to young people all the way to China. Congressman from Illinois, Raja Krishnamurthy, says his House Select Committee is opening an investigation into the Chinese Communist Party and the People's Republic of China.
Unfortunately, the vast majority of new vapes that have entered the market are being illegally imported from China, and these vapes, we have no idea what they contain because they are being manufactured in facilities that are not being, in any way inspected by the FDA. They are sourced from companies with shadowy principals and owners.
Krishnamurthy says the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party has sent letters to both Chinese manufacturers as well as American importers of Chinese vapes to get information on how they can be imported against U.S. law. Up next, we dig into how the city's budget negotiations got so messy this year. Heather Sharon joins us right after this to explain.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Members of Chicago's City Council returned to City Hall today after a week-long Thanksgiving break without a clear path to a deal on the 2025 budget. Time is running short for officials to come up with a plan that can win the support of a majority of alderpeople as well as Mayor Brandon Johnson. Earlier today, Johnson told reporters he was confident a deal can be reached.
I get the noise around my administration. I'm doing it differently. And I know it feels a certain way, but I'm doing it better. I am. We'll have a balanced budget that invests in people.
Our Heather Sharon joins us now for a look at how Johnson lost control of negotiations over the city's budget. Heather, so for weeks, Johnson has said that he will not accept a budget that cuts services or lays off city workers. Today, though, he said nothing has changed. Let's listen.
I'm going to hold the line and remain firm that I made a commitment to invest in people. And that's exactly what I purpose to do, and that's what I will continue to do, to invest in people, and particularly in neighborhoods that have historically been neglected, marginalized, and quite frankly dismissed.
And Heather, state law says that the city has until the end of the year to pass a budget. 29 days to go. How did we get here?
Well, it started with a massive budget deficit, $982 million, and the centerpiece of Johnson's plan to fill that gap was a $300 million property tax hike, which would have been the second largest in Chicago history and the largest since 2016. That was dismissed immediately, not just by Johnson's critics on the city council, but also his allies, who were worried that an increase of that size would fuel gentrification and push longtime residents out of their home. So with a fractured progressive caucus, that meant that Johnson could not marshal the support over the conservative members of the city council and push his proposal over the finish line. That meant he had to go back to square one, even after delaying his budget address for 2 weeks over the objection of some of his closest allies on the city council.
Okay, long road-ish to get here. Now, Johnson has several times referred to himself as, quote, collaborator-in-chief, and said he was approaching these negotiations in a different way than any other Chicago mayor. Break down his tactics for us.
Well, under mayors Richard M. Daley and Rahm Emanuel, all of these budget negotiations took place behind closed doors, away from the prying eyes of reporters. So once the mayor proposed his budget, it was a done deal, and there was typically a 49-to-1 vote approving it with very little public chaos. All of those negotiations, as I said, took place away from the public. Johnson says that ill-served Chicago and is not in the spirit of democracy. He's saying, we're going to do this in public. It might feel a little bit messy, but we're going to get to a better place once we get there, and I'm going to preside over it all as the collaborator-in-chief.
All right, so he's appeared to take a new approach today, declining to detail specific proposals his budget team made to alder people just 2 weeks, as you said, after reducing his property tax hike proposal from $300 down to $150 million. Is this an admission that what he had been doing isn't working?
I think so, because it was the second time the city council had basically looked at a proposal for a property tax hike, and this time quietly said no, unlike the very public 50-0 rejection of the $300 million property tax hike. It's clear that the next time he says, here's what the budget is going to be, he wants that to be able to stick. And as you said, he's got a very limited time to do it. They're hoping to pass the budget on December 13th. We'll see if that happens.
And Heather, quickly, what happens if the city council fails to pass a budget by December 31st as required by law?
Well, we would be in unprecedented, uncharted territory. It appears as if the city government would have to shut down. Vendors would stop being paid. It's not clear whether city employees would be paid after January 1st. That is a possibility nobody wants to confront, and is why there is so much pressure on City Hall to figure this out.
I'm sure they're all hoping we can stay in the precedented territory.
Yes.
Heather Sharon, thank you so much.
Thanks, Brandis.
And you can read Heather's full story on our website. It is all at WTTW.com/news. One of President-elect Donald Trump's campaign promises was a divisive economic plan: impose high percentage taxes on imported goods known as tariffs. His plan calls for a 25% tax on all goods entering from Canada and Mexico and a 10% tariff on Chinese products. Trump says the shift will help create more factory jobs, shrink the federal deficit, lower food prices, and deter illegal immigration. But many critics warn they'll have a harmful effect on the American economy and especially consumers. Joining us on Zoom is Jonathan Kappas, Associate Professor of Agriculture Policy at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Jonathan, thank you for joining us. First, if you would, explain how tariffs work.
Yeah, I mean, tariffs are a tax. They're a tax on imports into this country. And so, maybe a rough example is like a sales tax. And so everything that's brought into this country and sold is going to be hit with whatever that tariff is at the border.
So how might a tariff impact an average American consumer or Chicago, Illinois consumer?
Well, it's difficult to know because the details of whatever President-elect Trump will do in a new administration are still kind of hard to sort out. He's made some more specific threats, if you will, against Canada and Mexico, as you mentioned in the lead-in, but we still don't know the exact details, right? I mean, a tariff can be designed very narrowly, very specifically to address certain issues or challenges, particularly around national security measures, or it can be a really blunt instrument. And so this idea of slapping 25% on every good coming in from another country is going to be really expensive. It's going to hit all kinds of things that we don't produce, particularly in the food sector. If you think about some of the things we import from places like Mexico that we do not produce in this country, that's going to increase costs for consumers at the grocery store because there's simply no other thing that can happen with that other than it be passed on to the consumer.
So Illinois, our major exports here are agricultural, like soybeans, for example. That would be an export. But how might tariffs affect the agricultural industry?
Yeah, I think one of the big unknowns with what President-elect Trump keeps saying is sort of how the other countries around the world respond. So what does Mexico do in response? Do they retaliate? Do they hit tariffs or embargoes on exports like soybeans, which are an important export, as you mentioned, out of Illinois? And we have some examples of this back in 2018 when he first initiated tariffs in his first term. China, for example, began retaliating against soybeans as one of the targets of their response. Then the question or the real concern begins, do things escalate from there into a much broader and much deeper conflict to something we might consider as like a trade war in which we begin to see all sorts of tariffs and counter tariff and embargoes and things like that could really disrupt trade and kind of ripple through the economy.
Trump used tariffs in his last term as well. How did that go then?
Well, again, they used it somewhat narrowly on things like they started with like washing machines and solar panels against China, and China immediately retaliated. They retaliated, like I said, against soybeans was one of the big ones that we noticed. There was also some interesting sort of retaliation against things like Harley-Davidson motorcycles. So at the time, Paul Ryan from Wisconsin was the Speaker of the House, and against bourbon from Kentucky because Mitch McConnell was majority leader. So you could see them work very narrowly and specifically to implement a countermeasure or a retaliatory measure. But a broader measure against all exports from the United States, of course, would ripple through various sectors of the economy, certainly for farmers. It could disrupt trade around the world, and we really don't know how that plays out.
Yeah, and it sounds like China's response was clearly political. The Biden-Harris administration has retained some of Trump's tariffs, including on Chinese goods and electrical vehicles. In your opinion, when is the right time to utilize tariffs?
And that's a difficult question. I think a lot of it really depends on what the policy is trying to achieve. So something like electric vehicles, for example, as we are starting up a nascent industry. We're really trying to get that production and the consumer interest off the ground. And so if a country like China is able to undercut American, entrepreneur and starting and those sort of things, then you might see that as a way to kind of help the industry get started, and then you would phase those out over time. Another thing that Trump has used, and it's been questionable in the previous administration, is this national security interest situation. So we'd want to use tariffs to prevent things that challenge or are a concern for national security, so that we might protect industries like, a lot of talk about on computer chips or weaponry or those sort of things that we wouldn't want to get undercut or have challenges with. So there's a lot of those sort of targeted areas. And then, of course, the other one would be if countries are improperly using tariffs against American exports, then we might also want to consider retaliation in that situation as well. But it's, there's not like a, perfect mechanism for it. And I think one of the challenges is the United States has been a leader worldwide for many years now in trying to, manage trade relationships and agreements There's some strong critics to our free trade policy, but certainly to have the U.S. be the instigator of tariff conflict does present challenges both economic and geopolitically, just in terms of managing a whole bunch of relationships.
Now, Trump has claimed, he's promised actually, that tariffs will create jobs, reduce the deficit, lower food prices. Can you draw a line to that actually happening?
I'm not sure how that is possible given the state of our trade and imports, and particularly around groceries, because there are just a lot of products that we do not grow or produce in this country that would be hit with, again, a broad-based tariff that would impact the consumer's pocketbook at the grocery store. A simple thing we talk about sometimes in class is things like bananas or coffee that we don't produce in this country. So if you slap tariffs on that, automatically the price, the cost of those goods go up, and there is no replacement. There's no substitute that we have in the U.S. So if you think about it in that term, there's just a lot of those scenarios, many things that we import, things that go into automobiles, steel and aluminum and different items that go into multiple products, that you're increasing the cost of that, which then will get passed on and increase the overall cost of the final good. So even if it's not something that we directly import, the items that go into other products would also increase. And there's just not a simple way to replace it. As far as saving jobs, maybe over time, if we were able to, build manufacturing capacity to replace that. But that's a very long-term outcome to try to work with through a tariff structure.
And I would imagine companies wouldn't necessarily be willing to immediately invest in building a factory if they know that the president is going to be someone else in that office in another 4 years. Just about 20 seconds left, Professor. Congress typically sets tax policies, enforces tariffs. What executive power could Trump exercise immediately to put a tariff like this in place?
Well, and that's one of the big questions I think we have in how they try to implement this is what authorities the president operates under. Again, in the first Trump administration, they used a national security exemption to existing tariff policies that Congress had enacted. And so I presume they follow something like that as well. That, of course, raises a lot of concerns about how broadly that authority can be used and what's the most appropriate and proper way to do it. But to sort that out, you will end up having to go to court and fight that out through litigation. And so, again, the answers on that would be a long way away from the actual actions with tariff.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Professor Jonathan Kappas, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Up next, the monsters of the Midway are looking for a new leader. Stay with us. Bad news, Bears fans, or is it good news? Last week, the team fired their head coach, Matt Eberflus, marking the first time in franchise history a head coach has been sacked during the season. The move came after Chicago's 6th straight loss on Thanksgiving Day. Offensive coordinator Thomas Brown will serve as interim coach while the organization looks for a replacement who Bears president and CEO Kevin Warren said will be exhaustive, organized, and diligent. Joining us now with more is Kevin Fishbane, Chicago Bears beat writer for The Athletic. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So this is not the Bears' first losing season, sad to say, Bears fans, but it is the first in-season firing that the team has ever made. What do you think prompted this?
Well, there were a lot of high hopes for this team. There was a lot of intrigue, excitement. They had Caleb Williams. They had a lot of returning starters coming back. I had never seen this much excitement for a team probably in 5-10 years. And for them to lose 6 in a row, 4 of which came in the final play of the game, a lot of times you look to the coaching. You look to the head coach. And I think what happened on Thanksgiving was it was another loss that came at the end, that came in a head-scratching decision or lack thereof from Matt Eberflus. And players were very upset, very frustrated in the locker room afterwards. And I think Bears ownership, Bears general manager, the front office realized they had to move on because they need to get a runway to next season. They need to improve in these final 5 games and use this good nucleus to have something positive happen.
So it was the right call?
Yeah, it was the right call. I think the only question was when, not if. Now, you can probably argue that maybe it should have been done 3 weeks ago. You could argue it should have been done a year ago, that they should not have let Matt Eberflus get to year 3, knowing they had this opportunity to get the #1 pick, draft Caleb Williams. They could finally line up GM, head coach, and quarterback for the long term. They decided to stick with Matt Eberflus, and now they're going down a cycle. The Chicago Bears have gone down over and over again for 2 decades now.
Well, to that point, are there issues in the organization beyond the head coach?
Several, many. It's, I think a lot of this starts at the top, and if you look at what the Bears have done since George McCaskey took over as chairman, so many hires just haven't gone wrong. They've had 3 general managers in his time. They're going to now look for another head coach in his time. And the quarterback, obviously, there's been a quarterback carousel. They've won 0 playoff games since 2010. So a lot has gone wrong in so many areas of the building. Some things have improved, certainly. And as I said, with Caleb Williams, you have some hope. You have some excitement. There's a lot of good young players. 2018 was a lot of fun. 2010, they had the playoff win. But since then, there haven't been a whole lot of excitement.
What can we expect to see from the interim coach, Thomas Brown, who's, he's been on the come up, right? Like, he's gotten 2 pretty decent sized promotions recently.
Yeah, less than a month ago, he was the passing game coordinator who talked to us once every 2 weeks. Now he's the head coach. He's going to talk to us 4 times a week, and he's going to be the voice of the team. And I think if you talk to players and coaches, he has an energy that they really like. He has kind of a galvanizing presence in that room, in that building, that really attracts players and coaches, that they really feel that energy. He's very direct. I think they like that. He seems to be, he's very confident. He talks about that a lot. He's going to be himself. And I think players respect that. I think certainly the way Caleb Williams has played the last 3 weeks certainly helped Thomas Brown get into this role because they've seen the offense is playing well. They want to keep that going. He's going to have a lot of other things he has to do now as head coach as opposed to just calling the plays, which is what he was doing the last few weeks. But this is a bit of a job interview for him, not just for the Bears, but for other teams around the league. He is somebody that's probably going to be an NFL head coach one day. Is it going to be with the Bears next season? Is it going to be with another team next season? We'll see. But it's a great opportunity for him.
Certainly an opportunity for him to audition. President Kevin Warren announcing today that General Manager Ryan Poles will be leading the search for the new head coach. What does he need to be looking for to get it right, and how safe is Poles?
Yeah, well, you rarely do see a general manager get to hire 3 head coaches. So this will be the second head coach Ryan Poles will hire. It's going to be the first time he does it with Kevin Warren. So it's going to be very important because if you want to say that it's a results-driven league, the Bears' results haven't been there. The head coach he hired was wrong. The offensive coordinators that they have hired have been wrong. So a lot of, and this is the roster he has built that is now 4-8 for a lot of reasons. So I think for him, he has to get this right. The organization has to get this right. I think that they are looking for somebody. It's interesting you mentioned Thomas Brown because I think there are a lot of traits that he has that the Bears should be looking for. Someone that is very strong, very secure, very comfortable in their own skin, very confident, and maybe has some head coaching experience too. Maybe that's what this building needs because, again, this is not a rebuilding situation. They have the players that can compete. They just need somebody to figure out how to reach them in a better way than Matt Eberflus did.
How do you assess Ryan Poles' decision-making in general?
The roster is in a good spot. The salary cap space is in a good spot. They have an extra draft pick next year. They have good draft capital, so they can continue to build. But if you are going to be frustrated with Matt Eberflus's time as head coach, you have to look at the person who put him in that position in the first place and the person that decided to keep him after year 2, which Ryan Poles did. And then if you look at some of the issues that have happened on the field with some of the players, the defense not playing as well, it taking Caleb Williams a long time to get going at the offense. You could point to Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator who was fired a month ago. We talk about first head coach fired in season. Shane Waldron was the first offensive coordinator the Bears had fired in a season ever. So a lot of unprecedented things. So I think a lot of those things fall under Ryan Poles' umbrella. He is in charge of football operations. He now has an opportunity to take this roster, which again, it is a roster that can compete, that should be 7-5 right now instead of 4-8. And now it's on him to find the right head coach for this group.
5-6 weeks left. What should their goals be for the rest of the season?
Number 1 goal is Caleb Williams. Get him on the right path. You want him to be arrow up at the end of the season. You want to feel really good that he is your guy. Everything you do has to be about supporting him and getting him to play well, getting him confident, and getting wins. He's got to learn how to win. He hasn't won very much, obviously, since he's been here. So I think that's goal number one. And you do want to win games. You have some good players. You want these players to feel good, and you got to figure out who's staying and who's going, from coaches to players. So a lot of evaluation going on in the next 5 weeks. But for Bears fans, when it comes to January 8th and the season's over, you want to feel really, really good about your quarterback.
I want to be excited about next season. Hope nobody gets hurt. Okay. Kevin Fishbane, Chicago Bears beat writer for The Athletic. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And that is our show for this Monday night. Be sure to sign up for our free email newsletter, The Daily Chicagoan, at WTTW.com/newsletter. And you can also stay connected by following us on Blue Sky at WTTW. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. We check in on former House Speaker Michael Madigan's corruption trial and the latest on our city budget with our Spotlight Politics team. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, wishing all a happy and healthy holiday season.